I think maybe I should introduce Jim again because that will be part of our recording. So I'm just going to quickly run through that. Is the Facebook Live started, Kale?
In a moment.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's Prius.
Did you hear that?
Prius. Okay, thank you. I'll get it right this time.
Okay, just 1 second.
Thanks for your patience, everyone, as we're bravely trying a hybrid event with folks in person and folks online. We'll see how it goes, and we'll be interested in your thoughts on how user friendly this is and what we can do to make it even better.
Okay. Sue, I just sent you a message and I think we're good to go.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well then, I'll just introduce our speaker and thank our I'm going to thank our community members for coming to this educational opportunity. I'm going to thank our sponsors of our youth network, Burlington Foundation, and our sponsors of the Make the Switch program, Burlington Hydro and Burlington Center, and thank our volunteer, Ron, who's helping with photography today. Thank you very much, Ron. And also take a moment for us to reflect on our lives here on land that's been occupied for time immemorial by the indigenous peoples of this area, and recognize that we all have a part to play in the truth and reconciliation work that's so important to our continued lives together in peace and with care for our precious planet and nature, and what we can learn from our indigenous community members about being responsible with land and with nature. Thank you, everyone. All right, so Jim Fielders is an engineer with many years experience in environmental consulting. After taking the federal government's 1-ton challenge in 2005, Jim decided he had to do something about climate change. He started a renewable energy business, bought a Prius, built this green home in 2010. Jim gives tours regularly to encourage others to make their homes more eco-friendly and energy efficient. Through his company, Jade Environmental Services, Jim assists homeowners wanting to reduce energy use and cost while also reducing carbon emissions, including consultation and installation of heat pump systems, including hybrid heat pumps. Jim says he has come out of retirement to fight climate change and offers his services for free. Jim has volunteered with many community groups, including Burlington Green. He's active on Facebook and YouTube with posts and videos about technical and personal interests. All right, there you go, Jim. Thanks so much for having us for a tour in your home.
Well, thank you. Kale called me last summer and said, hey, can I bring the youth group around for a tour? And I said, well, you could, but I'd rather have you come in the middle of the winter to really see how a heat pump works. Now I'm having second thoughts. But an overview of what we're going to do is we're going to go out and see two heat pumps. I've got one that heats the whole house and then another auxiliary one for the garage. Then we're going to come into the garage and we're going to go through some of the features of the house that are on the wall panel here. And then we're going to go into the basement, see some of the mechanicals, and then go up into the kitchen and chat and see a video on a blower door test and witness the blower door test. So without any ado, let's bundle up and go outside.
All right. Woo!
You'd have the shovel.
You guys are missing out. It's beautiful out here. Uh-oh.
See, the snow comes off our metal roof, comes down there. Stay close to the wall.
It's close to the wall. It's actually not that cold out if you're prepared.
So this is the heat pump. What it does, it's got an air exchanger here. It takes heat out of the air and takes it through a refrigerant line into the basement to another heat exchanger and gives off the heat. I've got a laser thermometer here that we use for COVID. I'm going to measure the temperature around the house, around the unit. It's minus 13.
Ooh.
Now I'm going to measure the front, and it's minus 15. It's kind of hard to read that. So what's happening is, if you feel this, don't take your gloves off. It's colder here than air coming in the back. So I'm an engineer, and for 12 years, I've been saying, how does this thing work at minus 20? And it works. It's been working for 12 years, so I stopped asking the question. So let's move on, and we'll see a smaller version.
After you.
We have 12 people.
Yeah. Slippery out. Right.
So what you saw was what's called a central system, and it takes heat and distributes it through the ductwork. This is called a mini split. So for small rooms or places that don't have ductwork, like houses with hot water or electric baseboard heating, you can use this. So it's an outdoor unit here, and this is a little smaller, obviously, than you saw. And we'll go around to see what's on the other side. Try not to slip. So this is the indoor, what they call a head. And it's not functional right now, but it works with a remote control. So this is a remote control, and you turn it on and you set the temperature. It also does cooling and dehumidification for people who have humid rooms. Well, what people don't realize is that this sets a temperature at a sensor here, not here. So I could throw this thing away now because it's set to record the temperature here. People keep losing these things, but they give them, the manufacturers give them away free. So the other features of the house. Let me just get my list here.
Yes.
I didn't point it out, but we have a metal roof. So it lasts a lot longer. And people think a metal roof is going to heat up, but a black metal roof reflects more heat than a white asphalt roof. So this is the metal roof here. And we have a porous driveway. We just turn around, Kale. It's covered in snow, but this is interlocking stones. It looks like pavers, but they're separated with screenings in between and a foot of gravel underneath. So when you put a hose on this driveway, it goes straight down, doesn't run off into the sewers and pollute the lakes and rivers.
Wow.
Again, buried in snow is my fusion garden, which is landscaping. This picture shows grass, but we removed that, at least in the front. And we'll show you more details of that later. And now, in terms of emergency power, I always advise people on what they can do if the power goes out to run something like a sump pump or keep your refrigerator going or your heating, in fact. So we'll look over to my Prius. I'll just show you. We can hook up to the 12-volt battery and power, it's called an inverter. And this inverter produces 120 volts AC. It's not running right now. I didn't want the noise affecting us. And then we have an extension cord, and this is heavy duty number 10 wire, so but it's 120 volts. It'll feed, fall away along the wall to the other side of the stairs. I've just rewired this because I've been redoing the basement, so this is all hidden in the ceiling below. That cable goes into my electrical panel where I can then use, plug it into my sump pump or other devices.
And that's all run through your car?
That's the car. So when the car runs, if it's got a full tank of gas, because it's a hybrid, not a plug-in, just hybrid, it'll turn itself on and off to charge up the battery. And I figured it'll work for about 2 weeks to give me power, which hasn't happened in Burlington yet. And hopefully it won't.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Now, a lot of these other devices can be charged by solar panels. And this is just a simple demonstration for people who say like to go camping, and they can get a little battery pack and get it charged up by the solar panels. Kind of remember we lost this in the wind when we were at the Burlington.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Nice.
and you can buy just like a little boom power box from Canadian Tire that will do the same, and it'll run a few loads. Actually, I've got another unit on the floor here. So this is a built-in battery with inverter. So it's for RVers. You've got the 120 volt RV 30 amp plug, USB ports, and it's both 12 volts and 120. So that's the backup if I need it for certain things. Okay, I think in terms of the features of the home, use my little pointer here. So we use Energy Star appliances, and 12 years ago, you remember CFL fluorescent lights? Well, I should cross that out now because we put in a lot of LEDs, but had some CFL. Now they're all LEDs. And then because of the heat pump, sorry, the house is well insulated with the walls are foot thick, full of insulation and a tight vapor barrier. So my heat loss, which is a state inverse of energy consumption, is about 90% over what the Ontario code was in 2010. It's improved, but not as well as it could be. Then the heat pump you saw, it's the manufacturer's name is Mitsubishi, and the model is called a Zuba. So it was twice as efficient as if I'd gotten a high efficiency gas furnace for heating and cooling. I also have a heat recovery ventilator that brings in fresh air. And a lot of people, when they come into the house, they say, it smells so fresh in here. And that's because of this. So, and it also keeps the carbon dioxide low so that you don't get sleepy. Then we have a waste heat recovery unit on our drain pipe. And we use this to offset the amount of water we need for using domestically.
Sorry, this isn't a question from the chat, but did I just hear you correctly that you get the heat back from the pipes that go down your drains?
Yes, and we'll show you that in the basement.
Okay, wow.
It's by its code now under the new code, especially for multifamily buildings, and it recovers a lot of waste heat. Then we have low flow faucets and toilets, and now you'll see it's a gray water system that is used to collect water to flush the toilets. And I like here it says a hot water recirculation loop, which I'm not using anymore, and I'll explain why. I've gone from my original gas on-demand water heater to 2 separate electric tanks. And then all the building materials, as much as possible, we've tried to make to be non-toxic or off-gassing. We tried to avoid particle board with formaldehydes and other pollutants. So we would use like solid woods and tiles and that type of thing. So those are the main features.
Cool.
So yes, so let's now move into the basement.
Right. And hi, everyone. Just no, we're gonna turn off the video and audio for a moment just so we can get our coats off and stuff, and we'll pop back on the screen in a minute or so.
Hi, everybody. So while they're getting their coats and boots off, this gives us a chance to get acquainted. I thought maybe folks might like to mention in the chat if you have any specific interests or questions that you'd like us to share with Jim as we continue the tour. Feel free to turn on your camera if you want to say hi, remembering that we're recording. My cat wants to say hello. Hey, Kale,
We're
did you want
back.
to?
Yes, we're back, and we did a quick change. Here we go.
So we'll start with the heat pump. So what we saw outside was the outdoor unit. And what we're looking at now is the indoor unit. This is a picture from the far side before I built the wall. So that's why I got the picture here. And when we built it, it was cheaper to heat with a heat pump in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal than with natural gas. Things have been up and down since then, but now it's back to cheaper with a heat pump. So this big box over here has got the internals, which includes a coil, and that's similar to an air conditioning coil, but this one works 2 ways for heating and cooling. And as you know, with air conditioning, you have a condensate drain. So any condensation in the summer when it's cooling comes out the drain. Then you have a blower motor, and this is a highly efficient one with an ECM motor. And I leave it running at low speed all the time, and then it turns up to higher speed when it needs to heat or cool. Then on the very top is it's a hot water coil that if the heat pump ever fails or if it gets below -30, which it hasn't in 12 years, I get heat from this on-demand gas water heater. So I've stopped using the on-demand gas water heater and gone to 2 small electric tanks, not so much to save the planet, but because it was taking 2 minutes to get hot water from here to the kitchen sink, which is the other side of the house.
Mm.
Now I put 2 small tanks, and if you turn around, there's one here, and there's one on the other side of the house underneath the kitchen. Now the kitchen gets hot water in 13 seconds.
Huh.
So
Look at
Val is
that.
very happy. This also has a high quality filter, air filter. And it's a kind of a nice design. It comes packaged like this. So to save on shipping costs, because there's less volume, but it's an accordion
Whoa.
deal that goes like this and then slides into the box here.
Huh.
So I thought that was rather ingenious. This is
And how often is the filter changed?
well,
Great question.
we had 2 cats. long-haired cats, we had to change it every 6 months. They say you should only have to do it every year. But what I've also done is I've divided this cartridge, this box into 4, so I can just put a 1-inch filter in, which is what I'm using now because this is hypoallergenic. We don't have allergies, so we don't really need this. And the 1-inch are a lot cheaper than the big one. So what we call the heart of the system, like you use an analogy with the human body, this is kind of, shouldn't say the heart, this is the lungs. So it brings in fresh air from the outside and exchanges it with stale air going out. You see these pipes up here, they're collecting humid stale air from 4 rooms in the house, bathrooms and kitchen and laundry, and exchanging it through this exchanger in here. And so it's preheating the cold air coming in, so you use less energy. And then also if it's certain humidity conditions, it'll just recirculate air within the house without exchanging to the outdoors. And this just shows a schematic of where the piping goes. The red is the supply tubes to all different places in the house. And then the blue is the return colder air. And then the specific, we have a switch to turn on and off the HRV. When you're using the bathroom, you want to eliminate odor or moisture, you can turn it up manually to a higher speed. So that's where that's collected.
Wow.
So the next thing was an experiment that didn't work too well. This is gray water. So the idea was to collect shower water. Apparently scientists have found that the balance of the average home, the amount of water you use for bathing is equal to what you use for flushing the toilets.
Huh.
Now those are toilets not full like I have. So I ran in anyway. What happens was someone asked about the heat recovery. This is cold water in the house, and it goes through this coil. At the same time, these are the drains from the shower. So not a bathtub, but hot water going down the drain. So it goes through there and it's up this coil. And when it's in operation, this is cold and this is warm. So this is going to the water heater, so the water heater doesn't have to work as hard.
Wow.
This one isn't that good in big apartment buildings. I'll have one like 10 times the size of this. And it really makes a difference in their water bill as well as the heating bill. Sorry, not the water, the heating bill for the water. Anyway, it wasn't working. We had some trouble with the toilets, so I abandoned it until I realized I needed a humidifier. And the humidifier produces condensate or wastewater. It's a certain amount of water is picked up by the airflow, but some goes down the drain. So I thought I'd collect that and pump it into this tank and use that for flushing the toilet. And it's been working great since October. And I've measured, I put the date on what the water level was at different times. The house back tail to the furnace. This is now the humidifier. Right on there. And this is the drain that goes around to the, if you go over there, you see it gets collected by that little condensate pump and pumped up into that black pipe. I've got a video on how this is installed. I originally had it working off a humidistat here, and it was making a clicking sound. So I connected it to my thermostat upstairs, which controls humidifier. I think that's about it down here. Well, again, we went to the small water heaters, and it turns out we don't really need this one. There's just 2 of us. The one under the kitchen is enough to give us enough hot water. Takes a little longer to get up to the upstairs bathroom, but less than half a minute. So we can live with that. So if we just go up the stairs down
Up the stairs we go.
into the kitchen.
You guys are missing out on snacks. All right.
So this is where we're going to talk about blower door test, but so you see we're talking about finishing. These are solid wood cabinets, so there's no particle board in there. The counters, these are quartz, so they apparently granite and even a marble will off gas, depending on what mine the product comes from. So this is man-made. It's mixed up quartz and bonding, and you can get it to look like any quartz or marble. And so we didn't use things like MDF trim. This is again solid pine, so it doesn't off gas.
Can you explain what off gas is to people who
Well,
might not know?
when you plastics in particular, when you cut them or when they're just after they're manufactured, they gradually emit toxins that dissipate over time. But still, when you first move into a new house or a renovated house, you'll be exposed to those.
So that new house smell is toxins.
Well, that's just yeah, one way to see it. So then if we look at, if you remember the diagram of the house, there was also passive heating and cooling. So the house is oriented towards the south with overhangs. If you look from down below, you'll see that the overhangs are all up at the top. That overhang is 2 feet. So it stops the sun coming in the summer, except for that arched window up there, which is just an architectural feature. You can't always go 100% one way. You have to live your life for what you like anyway. So what happens is in the summer, we've got leaves on the trees and we've got the overhang that keeps the heat from coming into the house. Conversely, on 21st of December, I've got a picture. No leaves on the tree. Sun is low in the sky, and it's heating up the fireplace. The masonry elements of the fireplace. So, how much it does, I don't know. It's a nice story. So then again, we've got central heating and cooling, and one of the points of leaving the furnace, the heat pump fan running, is to make it even temperatures up and down. It's when we were in the basement, it was about just under 21 degrees. It's 21 on this level. Is it set back? Yeah, and then upstairs the loft. See up there, that's not more than a degree higher. So the house is all within a couple of degrees.
Wow.
Which is a problem in a lot of stuff, especially 2-story houses with a basement and central heating. That's a common problem. So the other feature is that the reduced heat loss because of the exterior construction. So we have a little video to show of what a blower door test is all about, and then we're going to conduct a quick test to show you what happens with different conditions. So is Vishwa ready?
Beautiful. We have the test there too. Are you saying, would you like to play the video now? Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you have it there or?
Yeah, I can send it I can give Sue the heads up. So it looks like we're running good for time. So we do have the availability if you're able to share screen and play that video from YouTube.
Okay, so are you all gonna watch it there on your own, and I'll do it
Yeah.
here?
We can watch it from my phone. As long as everyone on Zoom is able to watch it, it'll be important for the next part of our tour.
Yeah, I don't know how well people will be able to hear the one that you're doing, so why don't you mute, and I'll need a minute to just share screen and get this going. Okay?
Sounds perfect.
Verifying the airtime.
All right, folks, just a sec. I'll be ready in a minute.
Tightness of his new home. We're talking air tightness today and how to verify if the house you just completed actually met the air tightness goals. You know, this test is called a blower door test, and it's become a lot more important in recent years as the codes have changed and required this test. I'm here with Sean from Positive Energy. Sean, you're here to test and find out how well this house did. Walk us through the basics of what you're doing today.
Thanks, Matt. So this is a blower door. It's basically a fan that has these calibrated plates on it. So I know how much airflow is moving through the fan. I then depressurize the house. You can pressurize or depressurize, but I depressurize the house to 50 pascals. And a pascal is a very, very small pressure difference. Think like a PSI on a car tire, but it's a fraction of that.
Gotcha.
So that basically simulates 20-mile-an-hour winds on all sides of the house at once.
So in other words, we're depressurizing the house. We're going to be blowing out of this door. This is actually the door to the carport on this house. And so we're going to blow out and depressurize the house, correct?
Correct.
And then tell me about how you can find out how leaky the house is based on this fan's measurements.
Once I get to the 50 pascal measurement, the pressure measurement, I know that because I've got a hose that's going to the outside that's measuring the pressure outside versus the pressure inside.
Okay.
And once that is stabilized, I can then look at my reading here, which I enter this manometer with the ring size, and it tells me how much airflow is moving through the fan. And that airflow number, I can then use that in the volume of the home to determine how many air changes per hour happen.
Got it. So this fan is going to tell you a CFM number at 50 pascals of difference between the inside and out. And then how do you translate that CFM number? So we actually ran the test a minute ago and we ended up about 2100 CFM at 50 pascals. How does that translate back to a number that we can use based on code for ACH 50?
Yeah, so I take the volume of the home, which in this case was about 63,000 cubic feet of air in this home.
Okay.
And I then look at the number of CFM that actually is coming out of the home. This is CFM, so it's cubic feet of air per minute. And the ACH number is an hourly number, so I need to multiply the CFM by 60 to get the airflow per hour that goes out of the house.
Gotcha.
Once I get that number, I then divide that into the volume of the home to determine the air changes per hour at the 50 pascal test pressure.
Got it. So code nationally right now, based on the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code, is 3 air changes per hour at 50 pascals. How do we do on this house, Sean? What was my test?
Matt, you actually scored a 1.9.
1.9, that's good. So just to remind you, code nationally is 3 ACH 50 on the current 2012 codes. And here in Austin, I need to make a 5 ACH 50. So I'm about 30% better than national code, over 60% better than the local codes. You know, I had to make a couple of compromises on this house, Sean, based on the architecture and the location. We're in a spot facing the lake. We have some giant, gorgeous views. We've got a couple of windows and doors that are a little more leaky than I would typically like to use. But, you know, I think a 1.94 is a really good score considering some of the compromises we made. And that's, of course, much better than is required in this area. Let's change gears a little bit and say, if we would have had a higher score than code, what could that tell us about this house? And how could we use this as a diagnostic tool?
The number one thing that I'm looking for is making sure that the trades did what you wanted them to do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I see that's often missed are the top plates, where all the penetrations go through your top plate. Those things are not sealed, and that can death by 1,000 cuts that can lead to a lot of issues later on.
Tell me what you've seen in terms of bigger mistakes in houses that you've tested.
Yeah, Matt, sometimes I see where some trades needed to get into a part of an attic, and so they just go ahead and cut an access hole into the insulation and don't tell anybody, and now there's this 4 foot by 4 foot hole in your air barrier, your insulation barrier, everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Sean. And I think that this test can help you find not only the big mistakes, but as you run this test for many years like I have, it's allowed me to really hone it down. I'm really looking to get as close to 1 ACH 50 as I can on my houses. And I really appreciate you testing this house and all my houses, Sean. For more information, visit Positive Energy's website. They've got a great podcast where they talk about air sealing and HVAC systems, all kinds of things when it comes to testing. You can also visit my blog at mattreisinger.com. And of course, I'd love to have you follow me on Instagram or Twitter. We'll see you next time on The Build Show.
And we're back.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. So now we have got the blower door apparatus installed, and we're turning on the fan. We've got all the doors and windows tightly closed in this highly efficient home. I'm going to show you the results and then look at what happens if you have leaks. You want to zoom in on the gate. So what number should we remember?
900. And then
945.
just probably yell like as loud as you can.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask Vishva to open. I've got a screen door with a little cat door in it. We're gonna use that as our demonstration for heat loss.
Okay, perfect. Probably the most important thing is to just look at these numbers.
You can walk quickly and show a picture of the door.
I'm showing you what this little breeze was caused by. So just this little door right here is the only thing that was open that caused this entire change in pressure. All right. If
Okay, let's start off there.
yeah, if you can shut it off so we can hear it better or hear Jim. Amazing.
So that's a quick demonstration. Typically, when we do these tests, we will walk around with a what's called a smoke pencil, or just feel with your hand. You feel, especially around windows, you can feel the air moving. This house is so well insulated that it's hard to experience that. That's why we did that little test. But this is a very important part of an energy audit, is to determine how much heat loss you have based on all the leakage in your home. And an energy report will talk about the equivalent area. If your house was 100% sealed and you had one home that represented all the cracks and gaps, it would be of a certain size. So that's something that's given in the energy audit reports. And so it's one of the least expensive things to correct is putting caulking or like thresholds, insulation around weather stripping, around your doors and windows. You don't have to spend a lot of money replacing doors and windows, at least not as a first stop. You can get 10 or 15% reduction in your heating bill and cooling for that matter by doing some simple things. And there are rebates available for those efforts. So we'll go back to the basement where I want to show you. I've found a new product that is plastic PVC wall paneling, and I did my garage with the paneling, as you would have seen in the video. But if we come back down the basement, I'll show you the details. This is a product called Trustcore, and you may know Brian Balmer, one of the home reno type guys, who's a spokesperson for it. And what it is, it's a tongue and groove system. I tried taping and sanding and painting, and I said I'd never do that again. This is more expensive in product, but there's no labor and it's something I can do. So you have this trim system that goes all around, and then you mount these either vertically or horizontally. I did this horizontal just for ease of look. You start at the bottom, you screw these things in, and then you put in the next piece and snap it in and continue up. So that's worked very well. I don't know if we want to take the time to just go to the bathroom down there, but that's the first room I did just to see how well it would work.
Whoa. Look at this, everyone. It's like Lego for your walls.
Yeah, and as you come out, you can see I'm mocking up where everything has to fit. Even though I come back along this wall.
A question that just came in, Jim. How or can you seal the joints?
Typically, you can just use caulking. Sometimes around windows, there was a problem with no insulation in behind. That gets a little more complicated where you have to cut open the drywall, put insulation in, connect up the vapor barrier, and then cover it with drywall and paint and that. So that's an extreme, but a lot of times it's just leaky draft. In fact, this door here leaks a bit here. So it's just there's a seal here that doesn't press well enough against the door, so it leaks a bit. So I have to replace this, but I haven't done it. But it's usually little simple things like that that keep these in the right place and make sure they're in good condition. Well, I think this is where it's leaking down here. So a little thing like this is a threshold again. You want this to butt up tightly against the door. You can see the frame is a different shape than the door opening.
Great question. Thanks, Ted.
So I think we can go up and have the Q&A. Is that?
Yes,
I think the next
sounds
one-
good. So anyone who has any questions about the tour or just about home eco-friendliness, renovations, energy efficiency, we will have a chance to answer them. Jim will be back in just a moment. Get your questions ready. And thanks, Sue, for that good one.
Hey, folks, anybody else got a question? You can just type it in the chat, or if you want to ask, unmute and ask. I think we could use the hands up, use the reactions icon, and then choose raise hand, and then we can have you unmute and ask your question. This might be a good time to grab a cookie or something warm to drink. Out my window, the snow is really blowing by. Okay, Ted, I see your hand up there. Hey, Cal, we have a question. We have a couple questions in the chat, and we have Ted with the hands up. Why don't we start with the questions in the chat, and then we can go to Ted, unless there's folks in the room who have questions. I think you might be muted, Cal.
Yeah, I've been muted this whole time. So thanks for that, Sue.
We were just patiently waiting.
Well, thank you so much.
hang out.
I'm going to go with Leia's question first. And her question for Jim is it more expensive to maintain an eco home?
I don't think so. When you, I just brought the picture from this book that covered our front garden, this what's called a ground quilt. So we eliminated the grass. This is starting with outside, which is part of an eco home. But there's no, there is weeding that was required when we first put this in. But by far and large, the plants are non-invasive and drought resistant. So maintaining a garden like this is probably less work than grass, especially if you're fanatic about fertilizing and watering and doing all those things.
Is this your house?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I was featured in this book, and they actually took pictures from different angles to talk about this. Was called a ground cover quilt, where you use different mixture of different plants, and what's called a rain garden. Sorry, this is the rain garden. So when and it rains, the water comes off the eaves troughs into this stone bed, and then there's sand below there. So again, the water goes into the ground, not out onto the street. So it's similar to my forest driveway concept. But in terms of internal, I think maintenance is important. So if you keep your house well maintained, it generally costs less than letting things fall apart and having to have a large bill to repair things. So I think the big difference is in the initial capital cost. You spend more, but at least in terms of energy, you recover that. My payback was about 9 years. So I'm into 12 years now. So what payback means, I don't know, I'm spending less now every year than I would have. It's hard to quantify. Yeah.
Amazing.
So there are other mechanical issues. You've seen all this stuff I've got. Some people aren't hands-on like I am, so that can be problematic depending on your attitude towards maintaining things. Everyone should change their furnace filter or heat pump filter regularly. But some of these things get more complicated, especially if you want to fine tune them to get the maximum performance. It's not for everybody.
Awesome. Excellent answer. Thank you so much for that. And we have a hand up from Ted. So I don't know, Ted, if you wanted to use your mic and ask the question, or you wanted to pop it in the chat. The floor is yours.
Sure. Hey, just a question. Just curious, Jim, what's your electrical bill? And roughly what's your square footage of your house?
Yeah, so the heated area is 3,800 square feet, which includes a basement that we really don't occupy, but it still gets heated and cooled. And so all the heating is electricity, and it was about $1,000 last year. when we built a house, it was $500. So that's just normal inflation over 12 years. Whereas if I looked at it, I have a chart here comparing what if I'd gone with a gas furnace and an air conditioner, and wherever it is here, I was saving about, if I'd used a standard home construction, I would have spent $5,000 a year in the operating cost. But with the heat pump and the insulation and all the features, I was only spending $3,000. Now, that's when we built the house. I haven't updated this, but you know, they're still in concert that I'm spending less than if I'd gone with gas and air conditioning. And I spent about another $15,000 in capital cost to do that. Sorry, $30,000. I spent $45,000 for my house, whereas a regular home would have been $15,000 in difference. If you can follow that. The point is, I'm saving about $2,000 a year, and to pay back $30,000. So that's where you get your payback.
Awesome. Does that answer your question, Ted?
Yes, it does. Just to share a little, I'm a bit of somewhat of an eco-nut myself. My water bill is higher than my electricity bill.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know if that will continue, but that is the current situation. I am kind of curious if I could ask another one about I'm not quite sure I understand. Are you using brown water, like from your sinks? And
no, the original intention was to use shower water.
Yeah, shower water. Okay.
To flush the toilets, but it didn't. I won't get into it, but
it didn't work.
So now we're using condensate and wastewater from the humidifier to flush the toilets. So it's just flushing toilets with what is essentially clean water. When we had the shower, you would get hair and soap that you would have to filter out with a little more, getting back to the maintenance issue.
Yeah, you need to screen it out a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a built-in filter in that tank. But now with basically pure water, I don't have to change that thing very often. It's a washable filter.
I did a calculation on rainwater, looked at my water bill, and I didn't actually find that was, it was if you look at the annual precipitation, it just didn't move me. It didn't make a lot of sense. Something I've looked at, or a little bit here in Burlington, but I haven't. Building codes change very slowly, as you're probably aware, because most of the building codes were really rural originally. And I have contemplated, but not priced it yet, to see if it's feasible to drill a well, and drill a well and possibly feed my neighbors as well, and get off the city water system entirely. But anyway, I'll leave it for some other, other people got questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you offline anytime.
Yeah, the other really interesting one I'm pursuing, and I keep asking if I can eddy currents back to the system. In other words, if I can put in a hybrid inverter. I have a 10 kilowatt system. Thank you, Kathleen Wynn. Direct contract with Ontario Power. And I foresee the day where I'll have to change those panels out, and likely the inverter. And we should be able to eddy that power, excess power, back into the grid, and or put it into batteries and become independent of utilities. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Yeah, just on that, I've got solar panels under the microfit program. I'm just looking for my slide. I don't see it here, but it's up on my brother's farm. So we get 80 cents a kilowatt hour for 20 years.
Well, you went a little early. Yeah, I'm 40 cents. I was a little later.
Yeah, but now you're on net metering, which is maybe a little better. where you only need about a 2 kilowatt system for the average home to offset your electricity bill.
Based on the load of my house, I could probably put in 3 kilowatts of additional panels and probably go off the grid electrically, at some point,
Yeah, the trouble with net metering is any excess you produce, you don't get paid for. So that's the difference between the two programs.
I'm speaking to the Minister of Energy. Well, maybe we can change that.
Yeah.
Todd Smith. Anyway.
Well, you know what to do at the next election.
I don't,
Absolutely.
well, I'm not political. I'm locally focused. But hey, to anyone that's interested, the ministry asked IESO for a decarbonization report. It's on the web. Google IESO decarbonization. This engineer's read it. If I told Minister Smith one word, that it's fantasy, okay, that would stop the conversation. So I'm taking a different approach to critiquing it.
I hear you, and you can always consult with BurlingtonGreen because we try to do the best in those areas as well.
I probably should get involved because I'm pretty heavily involved in these matters. Anyway.
Yes, everyone is welcome, Ted.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that great question and the great conversation. I have two more questions here at the moment. And we have one that is asking a general question. What are your top changes that we can do at home for the best ROI or like return on our investments? What would you recommend?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, with the blower door test, air sealing is the most cost effective, and then insulation. Once you put in insulation, it's good for life. Whereas if you buy mechanical equipment like heat pumps, they're using energy every year. So what you want to do is do as much as you can with the building envelope so that the heating and cooling equipment doesn't have to work as hard. It doesn't have to produce as much energy. So there is a step-by-step process, and I'm happy to share that with you. I've got a little graph that shows what effect you get by doing different things. But typically, if you're interested in carbon reduction, the best thing is to go to a heat pump, because right off the bat, that saves you 70 to 80% of your carbon emissions. And for people who are on gas, you switch to electricity, you won't save a lot, $200 or $300 a year. But if you're on oil or propane, you save thousands. In fact, I've got some customers in downtown Oakville still with an oil tank, a 100-year-old home. So it depends on what fuel you're on. But apart from carbon reduction, you can save at least a little bit of money, and it just gets better as time goes on with the increase in the carbon tax and cost of fossil fuels around the world, as probably aware of with the Ukraine war. So the last thing, we were talking about solar with the other question. I leave solar to the last because you want to reduce all your loads so you don't need as big a solar system to produce your electricity. So the same as for heating, you want to stop your heat loss so your heating system isn't as big. And if that heating system is electric, again, you want it as efficient as possible to power by solar energy.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jim. And I'm just recognizing that when we send out our follow-up email, you probably have a bunch of really great resources we can include for all of these meeting attendees. One more question, actually there's two more. So a question from Aria. Does having an eco home affect the speed of your appliances, like heating and cooling water, or anything like your Wi-Fi system? Yeah, what sort of effects does having an eco home have on those sort of items, if at all?
Yeah, probably not much. When you picture heating your water for drinking and washing, um, we assume the house is heated to begin with. So the water has to be heated from room temperature up to whatever you set it at for your purpose. So whether you've got a very tight building envelope or not, doesn't really change that. So in terms of water heating, you want to look at what is the most efficient way to heat water. So you can also get a heat pump water heater, not to bore you, but then you can get a hybrid heat pump water heater that senses, depending on the time of year, whether you should be using the full heat pump because it takes heat out of the air, just like we saw outside, but the heat inside your room to transfer into the water. So in the very cold days of winter, you may not want that. And so you can switch it to all electric. So that's why it's called hybrid. It can either work on heat pump or hybrid. And these save about 60% of the cost of heating compared to a regular tank. But they cost 3 or 4 times as much to install. So there's always that ROI or payback concern that you may want to.
Awesome. Thanks so much. This one is a little bit more specific. And just wondering if you, Jim, they're wondering if you have any thoughts on Daniel's MVP2 in Brampton, if you've heard of that. And they are explaining that it is the largest low carbon master planned community of condo suites and townhomes in Canada. Are you aware of that? And do you have any thoughts about it?
I don't know that specifically one, but I was a consultant for the building industry 3 years, and I have a lot of respect for Daniels. And the another big builder is Mattamy. They tried going to things like mass production of homes in factories and sending out panels for faster construction and looking at energy efficient measures. This was around late 90s, early 2000s, and it just didn't catch on. Now it's being revisited mainly because of cost. So there is a big difference in your bills if you can go to more energy efficient construction. So yeah, I'd say like kudos to them that we need a lot more builders that are forward thinking like that.
Amazing. Okay, great answer. And a question. As someone who's been on the sort of home improvement and energy efficiency journey for a while, do you have any general or specific words of wisdom for someone who might be approaching this and thinking about these things for the first time?
Bottom line is don't wait. You can analyze stuff to death. I'm an engineer. I like analyzing stuff to death, but in 2005, I said I had to do something. I didn't have all the answers. I never heard of a air source heat pump, which you saw. But I went for it because every year since 2010, I've been using 90% less emissions than the houses around me. Now, the cost of electricity and gas go up and down all the time. So financially, who knows what's going to happen? But you do know if you reduce your carbon, it's going to stay reduced.
Mm-hmm.
So don't wait.
Awesome. And then just one question from me personally is I know we talked about climate change, but just your inspiration and your motivation that sort of like keeps you going. It sounds like there's a lot of problems that you solve and things that you go through. What sort of encourages you to put so much effort and take such great actions?
I guess to answer that, when I enrolled in engineering school, I didn't know what an engineer was. They said, you're good at math and science, so go into engineering. Okay, and they probably pay you well, so that sounds good. But my first year in engineering, I read a book called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, who's since passed away. But the book starts off with saying, and no birds sing. So it was a whole talk about the pollution of the environment. This is in the late 60s. I'm that old. It changed my mind. It changed my life. to realize how delicate this planet that we're on really is. And that's what convinced me to do something. And I haven't changed. I still have that passion for doing as much as I can and helping anybody who's interested. You know, call me anytime.
Amazing. Well, I think that is the last question that has come in. So as I'm saying a final thank you to Jim here, if someone wants to pop in a burning question, feel free. But I just want to thank you, Jim, on behalf of Burlington Green and for all of these participants who had the pleasure of joining us today. And just for all of the work that you're doing, because even throughout this tour, it seemed obvious there was a lot of hurdles and different things that you had to maneuver through, and for you to accomplish such a magnificent final result. And I don't want to say final because I know you're always improving it, but to be able to achieve such things and then to be able to share them and all of us be able to learn from you is very, very much appreciated. And we have more thank yous just coming into the chat here. Some nice to see you again. I'll let you read them so you can see if you know these specific people, but fascinating and inspiring tour. Thank you so much. Lots of people inspired. Do you have any closing words or words of wisdom you'd like to share with us before we just move on to our closing event announcements?
Well, Kale, when you called me last summer, we said, when was the last tour we did? And it was 2014, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, let's do this more often.
I agree. This was really fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And just like I'd say all of you who learned so much, probably want to share this with friends. So definitely let us know if you'd like to see an event like this again, and most likely in the summer, at least in the spring, to make sure the weather is a little bit more hospitable for us. But I will just say a final thank you to Jim, and then I'm going to stop my video share so that Sue can just share a few pieces of information and upcoming events for you all before you sign off. So thanks so much, everyone, from Jim and from me here in his lovely eco home. And thanks so much, Sue, for sharing all of our upcoming events with everyone else at the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kale. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody there at the at Jim's home. Was a great tour, lots of inspiration. My quote for the day is "Don't wait." I love that. I think that's fantastic. So I'm just going to quickly share some things coming up with Burlington Green that we'd love you to know about. So, and I'll start with thanks to Ron, who did our photography today, and thanks to all of our participants who made it such a fun and informative time together. Great questions, everybody. Thank you. And to Kale for being our camera person and making sure we could all hear quite well. It was really well done. Thanks, Kale. So I'm going to announce some stuff, and we'll share a lot of these links in a follow-up email, so you'll get that. But Burlington Green is hiring. We're looking for a program assistant on contract with the potential for that to be continued. And it's an exciting opportunity advancing a variety of locally focused environmental programs, events, presentations, and activities. We also have lots of different volunteer opportunities right now. We're looking for folks to help us with our social media content. We have opportunities for youth to work on that. We'll have folks doing event greening at festivals and events in the summer. We're looking for online research support. And we're also welcoming students who would like to do a co-op placement with us. So those things are all coming up, and pretty soon we'll be looking for a board member with legal experience and possibly other areas of experience. So look for that to be coming up soon. And we also invite the community to help us power our work to protect and care for local nature and to combat climate change by joining our 3-year campaign. We're fundraising over the next 3 years. That campaign is called The Time Is Now. You can also say don't wait, and you can go to burlingtongreen.org/donate to learn more about that. And here's some events coming up. So on March 10th, we're going to be opening registration for our Clean Up, Green Up community-wide effort. You can join with well, last year there were more than 10,000 folks who participate in cleaning up litter and greening up our community. So we'd love to have you join that. There's opportunity for sponsorships. There's team and group activities. Mondays in March, our youth network will be getting together on March 13th. They're hearing from the founder of A Green Future, who runs the Butt Blitz, collecting cigarette butts for recycling. And on March 27th, the Youth Network has a film screening of Shoreline, The Paddle Against Plastic, and a beach cleanup. On March 15th and 21st, we're having volunteer information sessions, and they're both online and in-person options for that. Save the date of April 22nd, which will be our Earth Day celebration with a tree planting, afternoon cleanup, beach eco activities. And on May 13th, we're having a zero waste drive and repair cafe with our friends at the Repair Cafe. And we're looking for community members to organize with their clubs and teams and faith groups to do their own electronic waste drives and bring items on the 13th to our drives, so we can get those items properly recycled and reused. And you can email us about that. We'll put information in the follow-up message. So we have lots of great team activities and ways to engage, for families to engage. And all this information is on our website, burlingtongreen.org. So I'm just say on behalf of Cal and the team at Burlington Green, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. And if there's any last questions or anything, we can stay on the call if you like. I'll stop the recording and say thanks, everybody.